Hey guys, just a quick content warning here. We do talk about stuff like mental health struggles and the horrible practices of medical institutions, as well as a little bit of self-harm. Not much, but we do talk about this during this episode, and if that is an issue for you guys, it's perfectly okay if you want to skip out this episode. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of a comic book report. So last episode we did, what was it, a Killing Joke?
Yeah.
So today...
The joke wasn't even that funny.
It was not a fucking funny joke, but today we are going to be talking about Moon Knight. Moon Knight, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be a fun recording. This recording is going to be 2.5 hours long, and I cut out most of it.
Bro just has too much energy.
I'm excited. It's Moon Knight. More importantly, it's Jeff Lemire's Moon Knight from 2016.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of research for this one, even though I had way more time to research it than the other two episodes. The most I can say is he's worked on some other stuff. He's done some work on X-Men. He's done some work on Hawkeye. I think he did some Green Lantern stuff. He did some personal stuff like the Essex County trilogy and something called Sweet Tooth. Now the artists, I was going to see what I could learn about Smallwood, but since there's so many artists on this one, I figured we'd just talk about the art whenever we get there. So Jeff Lemire's Moon Knight focuses a lot on the use of mental health in the character, as well as very much a personal journey for Marc Spector as an individual. So how'd you feel about it? I want to hear your initial thoughts before we talk about, in the abstract, more of the story, because I feel like doing a in-order talk about the story will be kind of difficult with this one.
Yeah.
So,
personally, I think it was pretty good. You know, it didn't have Isaac Oscar on it.
Oscar Isaac?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you. Do you hear specific people's voices whenever you read comics?
Not in particularly,
really?
No. Yeah.
Because I do. I do whenever it comes to most famous depictions of characters. It tends to default to that. Batman's Kevin Conroy. Superman's Tim Daly, you know.
I say there's definitely a voice in my head that reads
stuff for you.
Yeah, it reads the words, but I can't describe specific characters' voices. They're just kind of there, and it doesn't necessarily sound like me. I don't know how to explain. I guess my memory or imagination doesn't keep it conscious long enough for me to really put anything down on it. For me, it kind of is an active thing. It kind of keeps me more engaged, is kind of having specific voices in my head for characters. I started reading Hellboy, and I have a very much kind of the take of Ron Perlman's voice in the movie, even though I haven't seen that movie. It's a good movie.
I know, I should watch it, but it's kind of a rough approximation of Ron Perlman's voice is what's plays in my head whenever it's Hellboy's dialogue. But for this, it was very much Oscar Isaac. And it might just be the fact that I like Oscar Isaac as an actor. I think he's got a very unique voice that fits him quite well.
Yes, but Moon Knight, it was really good.
Yeah.
I like it. I do like the whole not untrustworthy narrator where you can't really tell if this is actually happening or not. I do like the aspect of them playing into his DID.
I really liked that I had, whenever you were reading this, you were reading it while we were in a call together, and I got your live reactions, which was fun. Especially since this is one that has got a lot of interesting twists and turns to it.
That motherfucker.
Yeah.
You know, I know he said not to talk about the story, but this motherfucker stopped twice from pancakes while the world was ending.
Okay, we'll get to the pancakes. Also, but was the world ending?
I don't fucking know, man.
Okay. So it opens. I think the use of a mental institution was interesting. Let's start there. So I feel like it was a good idea to fit it around a mental institution, because those are largely things that do not exist in the format that we see in it, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I think he even mentions it in the second chapter where he's this shit doesn't happen anymore. This very clearly isn't real. They don't do shock therapy anymore. At least not in America, you know? But, I feel like it was a really wise decision, because it gives off the framing of him being where a lot of people, I think, would be if you did live in the Marvel universe, would be yeah, that's where Moon Knight should be, is a place where he cannot hurt anyone, because he is very clearly a sufferer of mental illnesses.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do like the mental hospital aspect, and you are right. Like, there is kind of the insinuation that it's not real simply due to the fact that it's like very robust systems that they're using there, and not just, you know, shock therapy and all that, and heavy sedation.
Mm-hmm.
But it also just kind of like begs the question, because like mental institutions have always been like known to be really
a certain
shit.
degree of like abusive.
Yeah.
Wait. Oh, hey. By the way, I know that future me is going to edit in a content warning. Me doing a content warning at the start, but we are going to talk about mental institutions in this, and not really in detail, but we are going to talk about some of the horrors that mental institutions have done over the years. So if that's a problem for you, it's okay if you skip out on this one. Anyways. So
Lobotomies.
Yeah, lobotomies. Do they fucking threaten to lobotomize them?
Yeah, they do.
They do. Like,
I'm like, yeah, they do like twice, because they're like, we have to go to extreme measures if the shock therapy isn't working.
Especially since people like the Billy and Bobby characters, the white dude and the black dude who are like his quote unquote caretakers. That was a very common thing in the 1950s, I believe, was just people who were just like abusing their power, right?
Yeah. I do find it interesting that they were shown somewhere in each of the personalities.
Yes, yeah, we'll get to that later. But they were like a constant in it, which I thought was interesting. I do find it interesting that like they're there, but the big thing is for me that's a giveaway that something is wrong, is that all those people that he talks to, those are Moon Knight side characters, right? Yeah. So Frenchie's important to his backstory and is kind of like his pilot. Crawley, the British dude, who he is supposed to be British, not sure if you knew that.
I did not know that, no.
His name is Bertrand.
Okay, so is fucking Jesse's butler.
Should have never got that IE Kids banner. Crawley's there, who's important. Gina, who's big on Jake Lockley, because, you know, she's like a diner, like, lady. And then Marlene, do you remember, I think her name is Layla in the show? Yeah. That's basically who Marlene kind of replaced, or who Layla replaced was Marlene, was like the love interest and like the daughter of the researcher. Yeah. But like, you know, she's in there, and these are all kind of important characters. These are all important characters to Marc Spector's like life, right? Yeah.
Okay, now that I've read this comic, and I still like the Disney show. I still think it's like one of the better MCU shows. Yeah, no, like what the fuck? Like they could have done so much more with this show.
See, this is what I was talking to you about. First off, runs are wild.
Why do they fucking make Stephen Grant like a fucking like British cuck? When like in the comic he's this like millionaire movie producer. Yeah. Like that's so stupid. I would much rather have seen Stephen Grant be like some movie producer. Yeah. Instead of just, I'm about to get kicked out of my job at the museum.
I really like Emmett.
Literally.
I like it when I get to see a hippo god.
You gotta believe me. Don't fire me. There was a jackal chasing me into the toiletries.
That's not me. That's not me.
Yeah, literally. Like that. Stephen Grant was so much more annoying in the show.
I like how, because the big thing that this run did was it reframed his backstory at the start as has he always been here? Has it always? Because again, it's the idea is Moon Knight real? Yeah. Is he a superhero in the Marvel universe, or is he a mental institution patient who hallucinates being a superhero in the Marvel universe?
Yeah, and that's the thing I find very interesting because so if he's been mentally ill
this whole time,
which in the backstory it shows his dad, like, you know, he's getting diagnosed with DID and like his mom's dead or whatever. Mm-hmm. His dad dies, and he's sent to like this school or like boarding school or whatever it's called, like for like the mentally ill. Mm-hmm. My real question is then how much validity is behind like Marlene and him becoming like Moon Knight, because the military would honorably discharge someone who has DID.
Yeah, they wouldn't dishonorably discharge. They would honorably discharge. Yeah, he gets dishonorably discharged in the comic.
Yeah. Well, I meant to say honorably discharged. Yeah, because he.
Well, that's what you said. You said honorably. Yeah, I said dishonorably because that's what they do in the comic itself. Is they dishonorably discharge him.
Yeah, but the thing is that he has to be in the military for the whole like Bushman stuff to happen because he's in.
He's got to be in the military, then out of the military, and be like a private military dude. Yeah. For Bushman to happen.
Yeah.
But one thing that I want to talk about before we continue on the comic is the use of DID in Moon Knight. So it started off not great. In fact, I would argue that he's still not a perfect representation. If we're going to talk about a better representation of dissociative identity disorder and the causes, we should turn to the Hulk. Because Bruce Banner pretty famously has dissociative identity disorder. He was abused by his father for like the first 6-7 years of his life. And one of the common cases, one of the common things that causes dissociative identity disorder to develop is abuse, right? Which is what I liked about the MCU show, was that they showed a pattern of abuse in his family. Instead of it just being, he just kind of has dissociative identity disorder. Not to say that you can't develop dissociative identity disorder without abuse.
Yeah, it's the most common.
It is the most common.
Yeah, because
from
what I've read on my off time is that DID usually is some type of, it's your brain subconsciously masking trauma. Mm-hmm. So it usually is from something that's physically or sexually violent.
Yeah.
That causes
often perpetrated by a family member because something, what is it, most of the times, kidnappings and sexual assaults are committed by someone who the person knew.
Yeah.
And an uncomfortably large amount of times a family member.
Yeah.
Again, if you guys want to bow out in this episode, if this is a hard thing for you, I completely understand. It's just, the use of dissociative identity disorder with Moon Knight is weird and kind of problematic, because originally what it was is that he didn't have dissociative identity disorder. He used the personas of Stephen Grant and Jake Lockley for information reasons.
Yeah.
And then it was originally said that he had gained those personalities from pretending to be other people.
Yeah.
So, he pretended long enough that it was a real thing.
Yeah,
right?
he
That's
just
why
kind of absorbed him, yeah.
That's why in this, they reframe it as he's kind of been like this since he was a kid, right? Because it makes more sense, you know?
Yeah.
It's a lot more psychologically sound, right? But getting back on track, so Khonshu talks to him throughout this, right?
Yeah.
And one thing I found interesting is how Khonshu refers to him as his son, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because I feel like the whole deal is that Khonshu, whether he's real or not, or if he's a persona that Spector made it, or if he is this other dimensional being, right?
Yeah.
It's abuse, right? It's emotional abuse, right? He's come to me, my son.
Yeah.
He's using that language from someone who he knows is missing his father. He's emotionally manipulating him to, help him.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's a reflection of the fact that, very clearly, Marc Spector wasn't the biggest fan of being sent away from his family, mm-hmm. and the only reason he came back to his family is his dad dying. So, I see it as a reflection of Khonshu is kind of how Mark sees his own dad, because he was pushed away. He was pushed away from his dad, and he wasn't able to even come back until he had died, which. In the story, you have Khonshu oh, come here, my son, and then you find out that he's the antagonist.
Yeah, to spoil.
We're gonna get there.
We're gonna get there, but I that first issue is really striking, because he's talking to him, and he's you have to come to me, my son. Let them see your true face, and he uses the bed sheets to create a makeshift mask, right? And he reveals them as jackals, right? He reveals Billy and Bobby as jackals. Supposedly, right? At least in his head. And he's fighting through it, right? And then the part towards the end, whenever he gets his ass beat, is when Khonshu is perhaps I thought too much of you.
Yeah.
Perhaps I thought you would do this on your own, which I feel that's kind of why, if we're going off of the it's not real angle, why it ended up being Frenchie and Crawley ended up helping him, is because Khonshu didn't trust Mark to do it himself.
Yeah.
Because that first third is very interesting, because a lot of it is focused around their attempted escape of the mental institution, right?
Yeah.
And how, and if I want to put in my own theories to this, I definitely think that Crawley and Frenchie and everyone being there is specifically those two are there in his head for Khonshu to get him as there to him as quickly as possible, because they're the people that are what are you doing? We need to go. And and Mark's no, Gina and Marlene are still there. We gotta get them too. But I don't know. It's very interesting because the use of the artwork. One of the things I liked in the artwork was whenever they used more hazy memories or ideas, or just kind of that very start with Khonshu, the artist uses a lot more rough sketching instead of like the more defined character molding that is in the majority of the comic. It's a lot more of that sketchiness. Like the one I remember is the single page where he like walks by Gina, and it's a single like panel of like a super sketchy look of like Jake Lockley and Gina talking. It's like, what's wrong, honey? You barely even touch your, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good use of work. So to jump ahead a little bit, this comic has a fantastic use of multiple artists to convey its theme, which I thought was the best. Because if I'm correct, there's about 4 artists on this. 4 or 5 artists on this like 14 issue run alone that all have their own like style, and I think they picked the correct like characters for it.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I feel like the main artist, which I believe was Smallwood. I might be wrong, but I'm gonna double check. I really like the use of artwork in this, and it's just very well drawn.
Yeah, no, I really agree, and I love how the artwork picks up in the second third.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it was Greg Smallwood who was the main illustrator.
Yeah.
But the escape, right? So the big thing is the first third, I believe, is called Welcome to Neo Egypt.
Yeah.
And it is built around them, their escape from the mental institution and into the what Gina says she sees as like the subway lines, but what Marc sees as
this like catacomb.
These catacombs. He sees there's this doctor wearing red named Dr. Emmett, who he keeps thinking is Amut, who is this like crocodile goddess. And she's like, Mark, no, who am I talking to this time? Am I talking to Grant? Am I talking to Lockley? What's the fuck's the deal? And she's like, you've been here since you were 12, right? She's like, you've been here since you were 12. You've been in this institution pretty much your entire life. Every single time we make progress, you slip back into your delusions, right?
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is that she's like, there is a Moon Knight, you're just not him.
Yeah, that like there's a external Moon Knight outside of Marc Spector.
Yeah, which
does come in the second and third.
Like the second, the second, third for sure. On the third, final little bit of it, yes, as well. But I find that interesting. There's the page with his ramblings with his drawings and shit.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. He is just freaking, he's freaking out, right? Because as far as he knows, his entire worldview has just been altered, and he doesn't know if this is a delusion, if he's not supposed to be here, if this is a real place. He mentions that they're using archaic methods that were banned in the 80s.
Yeah.
And he's got his friends with him, right? So Crawley and Frenchie are come on, we'll get you out of here, right? And they're working together, and he's like, guys, call me Mr. Knight, which I think is a good nod to the fact that Mr. Knight is another persona, instead of it being that
it's Marc Spector.
It's not just Marc Spector in a suit and tie and a mask. Because the idea behind Mr. Knight was that it was a period of time in a Moon Knight run where vigilantism was a lot less, near outlawed. I think it was right around, I don't think it was right around Devil's Reign, because Devil's Reign happened a couple of years after this comic came out. But it was a period of time where vigilantism was really being frowned down upon. So the whole deal with Mr. Knight was that he was a concerned citizen kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is I guess he lied about a facial deformity to wear the mask all the time. But he's wearing the Mr. Knight costume, which by the way, phenomenal. What can I say? I feel like he's very much Moon Knight is the only character where you can put him down to the bare essentials of wearing a nice suit and a mask and it still works.
Absolutely, yeah.
But
so when the prison break does finally happen, right? Yeah. So they go into that subway line. Uh-huh. He punches a woman. And
square in the face.
They get to the catacombs. Is that when the Anubis happens?
That's when the Anubis first shows up.
Is it after they go back up a ground past the subway?
So Anubis shows up first there, right?
Yeah.
Because Anubis shows up more than once.
Yeah.
But before we talk about that, I do want to talk about how the mask is important. Yeah. Because he feels like he can only see their quote unquote people's quote unquote true faces whenever he's wearing the mask.
Yeah.
Because, like, they take it off of him whenever, like, Dr. Emmett and Billy and Bobby have him, and, like...
When he's on the roof, yeah.
Yeah, but whenever he's wearing the mask, they, you know...
He
Bobby
sees...
are jackals, Dr. Emmett's a crocodile woman.
Yeah, there's sand covering New York, and there's a giant pyramid, but when he turns off, it's just the Manhattan.
It's the skyline.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, he gets in that... If I remember correctly, how he gets out of that is he manages to get the hallucinogen out of him, or not hallucinogen, the, like, sleep agent out of him.
Yeah, the sedative.
Yeah, and gets, like, the other two, and, like, Dr. Emmett. But, yeah, then we get to the part with Anubis, right, where, like, he's like, oh, I'll ferry you. And very much, like, Gina's like, oh, what are you talking about? It's just a bus. It's just the subway. It's just the subway, like line. You know? Yeah. But, like Mark and Crawley are like, that's a dog person.
Yeah, I do like Gina being this kind of, like, I guess, like, voice of reasoning to kind of give the narrator doubt.
Yeah, because Crawley... Well, I think what the deal is, what I like about the seeds of doubt in this, is that Crawley sees the same things, or at least he says that he sees the same things that Mark does.
Yeah.
Whereas Gina is a lot more like, this is just a regular subway station, we need to get on the subway line, like, now.
Yeah. And, you know, once when they get to Anubis is like... trade soul for passage. So Crawley sacrifices himself to Anubis.
Mm-hmm.
And they get across on the quote-unquote Anubis subway.
Yeah.
And they get out of the subway system, they come up, and immediately as they get up, this is probably my favorite part with Gina, is they get out of the subway, Mark sees a jackal, and just fucking decks him in the face, and then Gina's like, holy fuck, Mark, why did you just punch a cop?
And the cop's like, hey, you guys, there's like a blizzard going on.
No, it's a thunderstorm, because Gina says that it's raindrops, and it's like
and
storming.
And for a brief second, we see through Mark's perspective it not being sand and being rain.
And it being a cop instead of a jackal.
Yeah, and he's like, no, wait. And the cop's just like, come on. It'll be okay. Come on.
And this is what makes me start thinking that maybe it isn't a delusion in his head, because after all this event happens, you know, Mr. Knight, he comes up to Gina and he's just like, open your eyes, I'm Mr. Knight, you know, there's a whole thing going on, and then Gina's like, oh my god, I see it too now, because like she starts seeing it after that moment.
Yeah. When he shakes her down, and then I don't remember how Frenchie dies, but he dies in that movie. I think what happens is the cop accidentally shoots him.
Yeah, I think so too.
Hang on. Alright guys, it's the best part of the episodes when I'm unprepared and have to open up my physical copy. Alright, you know, because like that part, yeah, he shakes her and he's like, don't you see it? You know? Oh my god, I completely forgot about the parts where he's talking about like the weird like subspace. Where he's talking about the weird like subspace, about like the other void, I think is what he calls it. Because like what he's saying is that like...
all the Egyptian gods live in the other void.
The other void, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's Emmett. It's Irish, not Egyptian. Oh, I forgot they fight mummies.
Yeah, because that's why I brought up in the call. I was like, if zombies eat brains and vampires drink blood, what the fuck do mummies do?
Yeah. So he. Oh yeah, that's right. They realize whenever they fucking get out of the before he decks a cop. They get out and they're like, why are we just outside the gates of the fucking mental institution? Shouldn't we have gone farther? We were on the subway line, right?
Yeah.
Yep, here it is. Yeah, no, but this isn't rain. It wasn't, you know, the cops, like, you know, this isn't right. He decks... Oh, no, it wasn't that he saw him as a jackal. It's that he saw him as a crocodile. And I remember how Frenchie dies now. The crocodile bites him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Takes a piss. Forgot about that. Sorry, guys. We're never prepared for these episodes.
I'm hungover.
I'm stupid. I should have more research and wrote some stuff down. But instead, I want to get right into this one. But, like, yeah, no, he decks the officer, and, like, the officer is a crocodile now.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like you're right, that, like, a certain degree of this is delusion, but, like, what degree of it isn't, because the crocodile bit Frenchie. Yeah, and Frenchie's dead.
And then Gina, who for a while was, like, sowing the seeds of doubt because she was, like, the voice of reason that was like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Anubis is a subway.
Yeah, it's just a guy holding the door for us.
Yeah, she also eventually sees the supposed delusion.
Yeah.
So that's what, like, that's what really makes me confused about a collective delusion. But then again, at the same time, there's other still seeds being sowed. Because right after that event, right, they're like, "How do we go forward with this?" And then magically, her diner's there and covered in sand.
I hope my boys. I gotta wait for my boys. Like, she's gotta wait for her like line cooks and shit.
Yeah, which even though she
like pancakes.
Yeah, even though she very clearly sees the sand almost covering it and makes a comment and sees the rain of sand now, she still needs to wait on her boys that never show up. So, like, that starts putting doubts in my mind of, is Gina even mentally sound?
Yeah.
To be sowing these seeds to begin with.
Yeah. And, like, I don't know.
Then they stop for fucking pancakes.
They stop for pancakes, but the pancakes are fucking divine, dude.
Okay, I do kind of want some Gina pancakes.
I want some Gina pancakes, too. Gina cakes.
Okay, but can we talk about the fact that, like, Mr. Knight, goes to, like, clean himself up?
We respect names here, folks.
Yeah. And they, my favorite thing is he gets cleaned up in the bathroom. Yeah, and then Khonshu just is in the stall sitting.
He's just like, really? Really? Is this the best thing? It's my dad.
I am Khonshu. No, I'm literally Khonshu.
It's your dad. Like, he's like, is this really the best use of your time? Yeah, no. So they put like Frenchie down, right? They sit him down, and they're like, and Mark's like, he's like, are you gonna help me? Like, Mr. Knight's like, are you gonna help me? And Gina's like, yes. And then they're like, where are all the people? And then she sees the diner, right? Yep. Yeah, no. So he's sitting there in the stall. Moon Knight's sitting there in the... Not Moon Knight. Mr. Knight is taking a piss. And Khonshu is just like, are you serious? Like, really? The end of the world. Set. Like this evil god Set is destroying New York. Right?
And you're eating pancakes.
You're eating pancakes and taking a piss. Really? Really, dude?
That's how I felt reading that. Like, what the fuck was he doing?
Yeah. He's like, really? You're gonna sit there. You're gonna eat pancakes. You're gonna take your little piss. We got places to be, man.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how he responds, but he's like, what do you want me to do, man?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, dog needs to recharge.
Yeah. Well, the issue is, like, he kind of is just like, yeah, I'm gonna sit here and get pancakes. I have a fucking Herculean task ahead of me. Yeah. Because that's kind of his whole thing, is that he has a lot of self-doubt in himself to even accomplish this, because he sees this as like immense task that he's being asked. Like.
Yeah. He's like, yeah. Mark, or, what's his name? Khonshu's like, really, you're doing this. You choose to fucking eat some food, and, Yeah, okay. Yeah, tell me, Mark, did I choose poorly? Are you the Moon Knight, or are you just another piece of waste that deserves to be fucking, that deserves to be flushed? He's like, I just lost 2 of my best friends. And he responds with, boo-hoo, you're gonna need to lose a lot more than that before this is over. And then Gina comes in and is like, hey! And then Marlene's awake.
Yeah.
And she's like, we gotta get to the pyramid.
Marlene? More like, yeah.
Blarlene.
Yeah. So they start going to the temple, right?
So they start going to the pyramid. Gina stays. Gina's like, oh, I gotta wait for my boys, right? Which, you're right. Like this is basically all unreliable narrators. If this is all taking place in Moon Knight's head, why is Gina staying? Why is Marlene suddenly awake? Because one of the things that they do back in the mental institution is that Marlene's sedated the entire time.
Oh, I interpreted it as that she was catatonic.
Okay,
like that she wasn't. Yeah, like she wasn't necessarily sedated. It's just she's in such bad mental spot that she's like barely alive. Like she's non-verbal, non-moving. She just is there.
Yeah.
Like I saw her as more as a catatonic.
That's emblematic of anything in mental institutions.
Maybe.
Mental institutions suck, dude.
I don't know. I haven't been to one. Trent's like, time to change that.
Let's change that. I'd make a nice phone call to one Khonshu Mr. Knight.
Oh, what the hell?
Is this Mark's father? Yes. It's like a fucking bird skull.
Real.
Yeah.
So we go to the pyramid.
So yeah, they get to the pyramid, and the pyramid is just like, there's flying jackals everywhere, and he's like, we gotta find Set. And then he opens a door. I think they fight more mummies. I'd have to remember. But he opens it, and it's just Set sitting there in, like, the corner, and he's like, aren't you behind all this?
Yeah, and then Set's like...
Set's like,
no.
But you know what I just remembered? The Moon Knight cameo.
I thought that was after that.
No, it's right. If I remember correctly, it's either right before that or right after that.
I just remember Moon Knight. beats the shit out of him.
Yeah. So they get to the temple, and they're like, what the fuck? And it's like, oh, I'm Moon Knight. And it's the Moon Knight costume, right? He's like, I'm Moon Knight. You're just a lunatic. And one of the variant covers confused me. I was like, for a second, I thought it was an ad. And it's the one, I'm not sure if you saw it, but it's the variant cover where it looks like an action figure.
Yeah.
That one, for a brief second, I was like, are they advertising a Moon Knight action figure with a straitjacket? And then it took me a second to realize it was a variant cover.
Oh, real?
Yeah. But, like, I like how he's like, oh, I'm Moon Knight, you lunatic, because it kind of harkens back to, like, a chapter before where Khonshu's like, did I choose you? Did I really choose correctly?
Yeah. Or the fact that, you know, when Miss Emmett was like, Moon Knight's real, you're not Moon Knight. You're not him. You're not him. You're not that guy. Yeah. Literally, Marc Spector is not Ryan Gosling.
He's not that guy.
Yeah.
He's not that guy.
Which, like, I guess they kind of begs the question on if that's true or not. I like to think that the Moon Knight that's out there, not Mr. Knight,
is another personality.
Yes, I like to think it's an extension of his mental health, because I feel like it's like Moon Knight is the thing he like wants to be but never can be.
Yeah,
because of his DID.
It's aspiration, right?
Yeah.
Because that's why I feel like he's in the Mr. Knight costume.
Yeah.
Because Mr. Knight in the comics was created during a period of time where he could not be Moon Knight.
Yeah.
Where he was unable to be at what would argue is his full potential. So him being in the Mr. Knight costume while this like mysterious individual is the Moon Knight costume makes it feel like he is stuck in a scenario where he is stuck battling with what he could be. And I think what makes that better is that he loses the fight.
Yeah, he does lose the fight.
He loses the fight, and Marlene ends up going with Moon Knight, right?
Which also kind of makes me like, what the hell?
What the hell? Yeah, so we get to the part with Set, right?
Yeah.
Where, like, Set's in there, and he's like, aren't you the mastermind of all this? And he's like, you know who the mastermind is. Keep going. Yeah. And we get there, and the Moon Knight takes off the mask, and it's Khonshu, right? And Khonshu's like, I'm glad you're here. I'm going to possess you. Where he's like, you can finally rest. This ethereal body has taken me as far as it will. I would like to take yours. And Mark's like, what? No!
Yeah.
And he's like, Khonshu gets mad at him. He's like, are you serious? Are you serious? You're a broken individual. Nothing about you works, and you don't want to rest. You know, you'd be doing me a great service.
He's trying to gaslight himself into just allowing the possession to happen.
Yeah, and instead he jumps out of the pyramid,
which insinuates that he killed himself.
Yes, because it sounds like it's fighting a losing battle, and he's like, you know what? No, you're not gonna have my body. And then he
jumps out, and there's like a hard cut of them like zooming out.
Yeah.
With him like bloodied on the ground.
Which again, suicide? Real.
Yeah.
And then hard cut, different art style. Oh no, I remember now. He's running for the door. Remember? So it's the thing where like before he jumps, he's running for the door, right? And it keeps changing art styles, where it goes from like him to like Stephen Grant to like the one weird to Jake Lockley to the one weird Marc Spector persona where he's like
the fantasy persona.
The fantasy persona where he's like a space pilot.
Yeah, it's like Star Wars, Star Fox.
I like how it's a little teaser for the second third, right? Where he's like running through it and he's like, what the fuck, you know? And he's just different. He's different personas and shit, right? And then he finally gets the chance and he jumps, right? And then hard cut after it's implied that he's dead to like him waking up. It's a different art style, and Marlene's there, and she's like, come on, we gotta get on set. And he's like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, what do you mean, Steven? We gotta get on set for the movie.
Yeah, and you have Stephen Grant, and it shows him that he's hired from Marvel as a movie producer to make a Moon Knight movie.
Yeah.
Where he's just like, oh, why'd I even choose to do this movie anyway? He's just a fucking C-list superhero. I don't really care about him.
Yeah.
Which I find it interesting that in the Stephen Grant persona, that the relationship is Marlene is a head actress banging the producer. Yeah.
If you guys want to know why that's weird and suspect, Google Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
Google Harvey Weinstein allegations.
Well, I just find it weird because like there's no like sense of coercion from like Stephen Grant's side, so like that kind of makes me suspect of like, is this version of Marlene just like
a nepo, basically.
Yeah, like
she slept her way into the movie.
Yeah, that's the thing that kind of, because like I don't want to be like that guy and just immediately assume that, but like there's very little actresses in the movie world that just, you know, date producers. Yeah, usually, you know, it's.
I think what's interesting is that the second third opens with Stephen Grant's perspective of the movie, right? And he's talking about, they do the little reference to Christian Bale's freak out on Terminator.
Yeah.
Where the actor from Moon Knight, who they say is Marc Spector, right?
Yeah.
Because Stephen Grant's like, I knew I shouldn't have fucking hired Marc Spector, and Marlene's like, come on, it's no big deal, we'll get through it, you know. And he's like, why did I let them convince me to do Moon Knight, you know? And he's talking about superhero fatigue, like superhero movie fatigue, because this is well into the MCU, by the way. This was in 2016, so this was around the time of the first Guardians movie.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, don't buy into that fucking superhero fatigue bullshit. You're gonna make a great movie. You wanted to sign on this because you want to talk about mental health struggles, right? You should be the director.
Yeah, because
he doesn't like the director he has it because he thinks it's being turned into like a schlocky, like cliche-ridden movie, which is ironic because my opinion on the Moon Knight show is that it's way too safe.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And then he like talks for a bit, and I remember they were like hearing noises, and they were like, oh, yeah, no, don't worry about that. The next studio over, they're shooting a movie about like wolves in space or something.
Yeah.
And then he walks through that door, and it turns into the Marc Spector fantasy.
Yeah, with the werewolves and shit. If I remember correctly, they talk about that. It's not directly after that. They get into the cab, right?
Oh, and that's when it becomes Jake Lockley.
It's because he's in the cab. One thing I like is how they kind of partially intersect with each other. Like the different like personalities like intersect at the same time. Where like he's in the cab with Jake Lockley, and Jake's like, "You don't want to go there. Don't go to that mental institution. You trust me. You don't want to be there. You don't want to go that way." And he's like, "What do you mean, cab driver?" He's like, "You don't want to go." And then it cuts to his perspective. You know, his night on the town and stuff, picking up like important people and shit.
Yeah. And then, we forgot to talk about the art style. So Stephen Grant, when it switches to him, it changes to this art style of like, it's very like clean drawn, like simple colors, but with complex enough bodies. Like yeah, and it's also very like simple lined. Like it's very just like bone cut dry. This is like
what's going on.
Like it kind of almost reminded me of the art style of like Archer. Like the show.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
And then once we get to Jake Lockley, it's like
this hard, harsh lighting. Like every panel
muted
uses
colors.
Maybe 3, like it's very colorful, but like in the sense that like basically every panel uses a different cut. It uses like a black and a different color.
Yeah, it's very like noir, like kind of like a comic book. Like the best way I can describe it, even though we never ended up talking about that one, which I'm not going to go into a talk about that. It kind of reminded me of the art style of Year One Batman.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
and just with way less colors.
Yeah, and also better.
And better. Fuck, dude. But like, you know, he's doing his little drive, and he sees. I think he sees on the news something about like murders and shit. But then it cuts at a certain point to what's it called to the fantasy, to the Marc Spector, which we're gonna call the Star Fox fantasy.
Yeah, because the whole thing about the Marc Spector one is that it's not even like Marc Spector as like as his like backstory. It's this like really weird, over the top like fantasy,
anime like.
Yeah, you know what really reminded me of is like those like action, like cartoon adaptations of comics in the early '90s where they were supposed to be like deep and edgy.
Yeah.
Kind of like, what's the one Spider-Man that was like edgy? Was it something O'Reilly?
Ben Reilly.
Ben Reilly, yeah. It kind of reminded me of that, or like whenever they did like the edgy versions of Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
In the early 90s, yeah.
Yeah, well, like the art style I think is really interesting. It's very, very good art style. It's an artist that I'm familiar with, I just don't know his name, unfortunately. I would be shouting out the artist if I was good and did my research. But like, I like how his whole story is he's protecting the moon from space wolves.
Yeah, because the space...
Which, do you know what that's a reference to?
No.
One of Moon Knight's first appearances, he was fighting a character called Werewolf by Night.
Interesting.
So they're kind of seen in the abstract as like a nemesis, as enemies.
Yeah, because the whole concept is they said that the Earth had been overrun because when the werewolves bite you, you turn into one.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a very interesting part. I don't know if this is like what happens next, but like later in the comic, it cuts back to the werewolf thing, and he crashes his plane. Right, he crashes his like spacecraft, and Frenchie's in the back like dead, and then it's cuts to Jake Lockley just got into a car accident, and Frenchie was in the back, and he's dead.
Yeah.
And then he goes to Gina's diner, goes back out, and is like, "Where is Mark's body?" He's like, where's Frenchie's body at? You know. Yeah. But like the Stephen Grant stuff, I think its easiest way to talk about this would be to talk about each persona individually.
Yeah.
So like Stephen Grant, he gets off set and he's like, this fucking sucks, and they have a gala to go to, right?
Yeah.
And the gala is at the Mental Institution, right? And Billy and Bobby are there, and they're serving hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah, they're caterers.
Yeah, there's the part where he's like, hors d'oeuvres, sir. It's like, he very clearly wants one, Billy. Give him one. You fucking idiot. And they're talking, and him and Marlene are talking, and she calls him Mark by accident. He's like, what? He's like, oh, sorry, I've been running lines with Mark. And she's like, you know, remember why you wanted to do this charity auction here? And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, you used to be a patient here, remember? And he's like, no? What? And he kind of freaks out, and the director is like, you need some help, man? And he's like, I don't need help from you. You're fucking fired.
Yeah, cool, because, like, throughout a lot of the personalities, they kind of suspect that, like, they know that they're personalities.
Yeah.
Because, like, they have the whole, like, Marlene going to Stephen Grant and, or like, accidentally calling him Mark, or being like, oh, you used to be a patient here.
Yeah, or how Jake Lockley is like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to go there, because Jake Lockley is usually seen as like the violent protector of the rest of the system. Yeah. Or kind of like how he's like, fucking Mark, you know? Yeah. I don't know. And he decides he wants to direct the movie. He fires the dude. And then we'll cut back, because I feel like talking about him leads to Jake Lockley's situation leads to him, because the main thing with the Marc Spector like Star Fox fantasy is that he's trying to fight the werewolves, right?
But he's getting overwhelmed.
He tries to fight Lupinar, I think is what the name of like the main one is, and he loses, right? Yeah. You know, the whole thing with him crashing his spaceship, and then Frenchie's his like background pilot, but then Frenchie's dead, and then he's also dead in Jake's. But Jake's thing is that it's a night on the town where he keeps hearing about the Midnight Man's like situations, right? And he's like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta suit up as Moon Knight, you know. And he suits up as Moon Knight, and he finds Crawley, and Crawley's like, I'm looking for the Midnight Man. I heard he's trying to sully my name. And Crawley's like, you failed, didn't you? He's like, you were supposed to. The fact that you're still here is proof. Like, I gave my soul for nothing. Yeah. And like Moon Knight's like, what the fuck are you talking about? The Midnight Man, dude. That's what's going on right now. And it's like, all right, fine. Here's where he's at. And then it cuts back to Stephen Grant real quick, and he's like, and one of the people's like, isn't that a little bit convenient? Isn't it a little bit convenient that Crawley knows exactly where the Midnight Man's at?
Yeah, because they cut from Jake Lockley to Stephen Grant by making it seem like he was
the actor in the movie.
Which, you know, I'm not going to say it's a direct reference, but that reminded me a lot of one Perfect Blue.
God damn it. You know what? There has been some perfect... I will say this, it does feel like there's some Perfect Blue influence in this. We just watched Perfect Blue like 2 weeks ago, and Jonah...
Yeah, I'm Cody, thanks.
Sorry, that was my roommate's name. Cody rewatched it in theaters,
It's definitely one of those movies you have to watch twice, because once when you get the twist and you understand the, like... Because, like, the whole movie's like, what the fuck's going on? And then you get to the end, and you're like, oh, that's what happened the whole time? And then you definitely need to rewatch it, so that way it's like, it makes sense again.
Yeah. I kind of feel like it's this way with this, but there's a lot less stuff that's answered.
Yeah.
But, the directors, the people on set with Stephen Grant are like, isn't this a little bit convenient? Right? And then if I remember correctly, it cuts back to Jake Lockley, he fights the Midnight Man, and then it cuts to him in, like, police questioning?
Yeah, he's getting arrested.
He gets arrested. What happens is that it flashes back to the Star Fox delusion, right? Yeah. And then he crashes his plane, flashes back to Jake Lockley, who crashes his car. Yeah. No, okay, I remember now. So what it is that the police questioning happens before he is searching for the Midnight Man, right?
Yeah, because they accuse him of being the Midnight Man.
Of being the Midnight Man, because it's a dude next door who's killing people.
And the cops are Billy and Bobby and Dr. Emmett is the police, the detective, that's interrogating him.
Yeah. No.
Which I thought was interesting.
That was actually a very good choice, because it keeps him in the story. But, like... Yeah, okay, here it is. I remember now. So it cuts between panels, right? in Chapter 7, right, Incarnations Part 2, they're, like, fighting the werewolves, and we got this nice 2-page spread, right? And then it's this part right here, which I'm going to show Cody, where he's, going, there's the big pyramid, which I completely forgot that the base of the Space Wolves was a pyramid.
Yeah, they're space
It's
bases.
this. The part where it cuts between the Star Fox delusion and the Jake Lockley persona, and they crash, he gets into a car crash, right? And it cuts back and forth again, right?
Yeah.
And then that's whenever he gets arrested, is that I remember now. So it was like a double situation where the Star Fox delusion, like Mark is at the taxi, right? And he's like, Frenchie? And he looks in the back and Frenchie's dead, right? And then it cuts back to the Jake Lockley delusion, right? Yeah. This is gonna be a very confusing episode, guys. I'm so sorry.
As it's confusing to read, I'm sure it's gonna be more confusing to hear.
Very much. You guys should definitely read the story before you listen to this episode. I'm probably going to say that during the warning because this is a very confusing story. But yeah, no, it cuts back to the Star Fox delusion, and he's fighting the fucking werewolf, and he gets bit, right? Goes back to Gina's diner. He's in. Oh, okay, yeah. So what it is that he goes to Gina's diner, right? He's like, oh, can I get a cup of coffee? And then it hard cuts to him.
Yeah.
In the police interrogation, they're like, so why are you wearing a fake mustache? Like, this guy's very clearly the murderer, right? And they find the Moon Knight gear in his taxi, and it's like, so why, Marc Spector, are you going under the name Jake Lockley? Why are you wearing a fake mustache? What's the deal? And if I remember correctly,
because that's when that and Crawley is when they do the seeds of doubt during the Jake Lockley delusion.
Yeah.
Because the one thing I noticed is that I feel like the Marc Spector fantasy one, and I think this is like, they probably did this because it is a fantasy delusion, but that has like the least amount of like connection to everything.
Yeah, because
like it's
also a relatively recent persona.
Yeah, like it has the least amount of seeds of, oh, you're actually Marc Spector and this is all in your head,
it's very purely a delusion.
Yeah, or like calling Steve Mark or this and that.
Yeah. The biggest thing is that it's the one that ends up finding its way into other personas' fantasies, where he's randomly for like a page in like Jake Lockley's, where he's like looking for John Paul, right? So yeah, I remember what it is now. So during the interrogation, right, he's talking and he's like, I want my lawyer. He's like, I want my lawyer. Daredevil reference. Yeah,
he said Matt Murdock.
Everyone, Daredevil reference. He says Matt Murdock, my favorite Marvel hero, superhero. Fucking.
She Matt on my Murdock till I Daredevil. Yeah,
exactly. Thanks. But I remember this while he's talking about it with like the clothes and stuff, and like Detective Emmett's like, you're the guy, and she's like, it's just a delusion, Jake. She's like, this Jake Lockley thing is a delusion. So is the costume, and he's like, it's the only thing that keeps me sane. But instead of him saying sane, she's like, sane?
Yeah.
He's like, I need the costume. It's the only thing that keeps me. She's like, sane. And he breaks his way out, right?
And that's when he goes to speak to Crawley, ain't it? After he breaks up?
Yeah. Yeah, hang on, double check.
I think it might switch back to Mark first.
It switched back. So during this conversation, he's like, they're talking about it, and it switches back to Steven for a second, right? Because if I remember correctly, oh yeah, I forgot that like Marc Spector is in there for a second where he fumbles the line, right? Because it cuts to for a page back to Stephen Grant's perspective, because he's like cut, and he's and the actor Marc Spector is like, sorry Stephen, I fumbled the line. And he's like, oh shit. Yeah, no, go again. And then it goes back to the Jake Lockley stuff, right? Oh, I forgot. Right whenever it goes back, Jake Lockley is the one that says action.
Really?
Whenever it cuts back, and the detective's like, what? That's right. He breaks out, right? And he runs with the Moon Knight stuff, and he goes and he talks to Crawley, and Crawley's like, remember I sold my soul, right? Yeah. So it gets to him. He gets to the Midnight Man, and then it's cut. And then the guy who's playing the Midnight Man. Oh yeah. So this is the part where it really shits the bleeding, right? So the page is it's the moon it's Moon Knight confronting the Midnight Man, and Marlene goes, Moon Knight, be careful, he's insane. And he says, quiet, right? Moon Knight responds with, let her go and face me, you ghoul. And Midnight Man responds with, you're the one I've wanted all along, Moon Knight. All of those deaths were just an invitation to this deadly dance. Deadly dance? Really? Is that the best you can come up with? And then it cuts back to Steven, and Steven's like, cut, and Moon Knight, the guy who's playing the Midnight Man is like, dude, I'm sorry, this dialogue is awful, dude. And the guy who's playing Moon Knight is like, I don't get the plot. Why is Marlene on the roof? Why does Crawley know where he's at? And Marlene's the only one that's like, can we just keep doing it? This is the part where they mention it, right? And they're like, what's wrong, Steven? Did you hear something? And then one of the people is like, yeah, they're filming some space werewolf thing in the next door room, right? This is the part with the door. I am so sorry. This is a very like flip.
Yeah, keep up. Yeah, keep up.
This is the one where he's going through the doors.
Yeah.
Where like he hears about the space werewolf thing and he starts running, right? Steven's like, oh yeah, I remember now. This is the bleed over with the Star Fox persona. Is that he hears about the thing, and Steven's like, I'm all mixed up, and she's like, Steven, and then Steven remembers he was bitten by a werewolf on the moon.
Yeah.
So he starts running. He goes through the door, right? Sees the fight between Marc Spector and Lupinar, goes to another door, and says no at the same time as, like, the fucking Star Fox persona, right? And then he, for a brief panel, is in the Jake Lockley delusion, and then all of a sudden it's the Star Fox delusion again, and then it's him again, and then keeps cutting back and forth, this six panel look, where, like, it keeps cutting back and forth between the three personas, then all at the same time, back to Smallwood's art, right?
And it's Mr. Knight.
And it's Mark. It's just like, hey guys, welcome back. It's time to talk, right?
Yeah.
And we get the explanation of all the characters' backstories. He's like, yeah. Mark's like, none of you guys are real. You guys were just delusions created by me. And Moon Knight's like, tough shit. How do you know you're not the real one? How do you know you're the real one? And Steven's like kind of like freaking out and stuff, and then we get stuff like the space fox delusion. Mark like explains his backstory of being just like a pilot who wanted to go to space, and like how like the werewolf virus like took over stuff like the Avengers and the X-Men, and the moon was like the last frontier for humanity. And the real Mark is like, yeah, I don't know what the deal with you is. You're very recent, right? And then he's like, you're already starting to crumble away. And, like, Stephen Grant sees this and is freaking out, you know?
Yeah, because Stephen Grant runs away.
Stephen Grant runs away, because if I remember correctly, Moon Knight tries to fight back, but also ends up crumbling away. And then
because it's in between that where Stephen Grant runs away, which... Did Moon Knight come out of the Jake Lockley
Moon Knight came out of the Jake Lockley fantasy, yes.
Yeah. Which, like, makes sense, because, like...
Because I would argue that the two of them are that Jake Lockley and Moon Knight are the two that are most tied together.
Yeah, especially with, like... Because I feel like Jake Lockley being, like, the violent protector personality, it, like, makes sense for him to be the Moon Knight and, like, the one that's trying to carry out the aspirations. Because the thing that I was going to talk about is that the whole, like, with this second third, the whole Stephen Grant... like, fantasy of him being a movie producer and all the Jake Lockley and Mark shit being movies, I feel like is very much like he's the emotional protector personality.
Jake Lockley or Stephen Grant?
Stephen Grant.
Yes.
Because Jake Lockley is like the violent, like, I'm here to protect the other personalities.
Protect the system at all costs.
Stephen Grant is there to
be emotional baggage.
Yeah, to be emotional baggage, because he's the one that has to deal with the relationship with Marlene. He's the one that has to deal with getting rid of the director. And then on top of it, whenever shit gets too much when stuff gets too much for Jake Lockley and Mark, Stephen Grant comes in and makes them movies.
Yes.
Which is how a lot of people who, especially someone like me who's experienced psychosis before, usually when you're having disrealization.
Dissociation or disrealization?
Disrealization.
Okay.
Whenever you have like a disrealization moment where like reality is like not seeming real to you, a lot of people describe it as viewing reality through a movie.
Kind of like how you see movies. I have disrealized.
Yeah.
I've been like that before.
Yeah, and that's what I think Stephen Grant's doing, is he's making these fantasies being seen as a movie to protect him emotionally, because it also fits in with the background of Stephen Grant being created as a friend of his later down the road in the comic, making him the emotional protector, because it was when he had no one. And then I feel like there's also a callback to him being the emotional protector when it came to the Moon Knight show. Because he was
the
first personality formed whenever his brother died and his mom started beating him for it.
Yeah. You know what, you make a valid point, because I didn't even think about the mental aspects of this, is the fact that it focuses on the idea of, like...
Stephen Grant protects him emotionally.
Jake Lockley... So Stephen Grant protects them emotionally, Jake Lockley protects the system
physically, yeah.
And the Marc Spector Star Fox delusion is a fantasy
which
meant
also
to dissociate.
Fits in with the show, because who's the one that actually defeats the villain? It's Jake Lockley.
Exactly. I still don't like how they handled Jake Lockley.
Yeah, how it's just a blackout.
Missing until the very end.
Well, I think what they were going to do is that they were trying to use Jake Lockley, like, being just a blackout and a hard cut, is that they were going to expand on that if it ever got a second season.
Which I'm pretty sure it's going to, but I've heard it's not. I've heard it is, and I heard it has.
It's, like, in production hell right now.
Well, especially with the writer's strike going on.
With the writer's strikes, and also, I remember there being an interview that Oscar Isaac didn't want to do a second season.
Yeah. This isn't like an Obi-Wan situation where he doesn't need a second season. I would argue that Moon Knight needs a second season.
Yeah, Moon Knight needs a second season. I would like a second season because I feel like they can make it even expand on it being better, because I think it being one season is its downfall, because if this just is the end-all be-all of that show, then it just is going to go down in history as a brilliant attempt that failed because it was too safe. It needs that second season to like redeem itself.
Take some risks.
Yeah.
But back on this, I didn't even think about how like the different parts of this, the different personas are in their situation, because in this second third, it is very much a bunch of Mark being fractured, right?
Yeah.
Because you can tell with the way that we were trying to describe the events, right? It's all jumbled together because it's three stories all at the same time that converge in very minute but meaningful ways, right? Because my whole idea is that if Steven is the emotional protector and Jake is the physical protector, then the Star Fox delusion is purely for dissociation, right?
Yeah, because
it is the one that is the most escaped from reality.
Yeah, well, that's why whenever you have those moments where serious stuff happens in the Mark fantasy, and like the Star Fox one, it cuts back to one of them, because like when Frenchie dies, it cuts to Jake Lockley.
And whenever he gets bit, it cuts back to Steven.
Yeah.
Like
Frenchie dies twice. R.I.P. Frenchie.
R.I.P. Frenchie. Ah, poor frog man.
Yeah. R.I.P. Frog.
R.I.P. Frog. But like, I never thought about this whenever I look at this, because I realized while I was reading it that it's still a fantastic part of the comic, but I didn't think to look at it through a psychological lens, ironically enough.
Really?
Is that, they all kind of serve their roles in the scenario, right?
I see, that's how I interpret it whenever I read it, is that they're all serving a role.
Yeah, because Stephen Grant has a certain degree of reality to it in that he is just a producer.
Yeah.
He's on set every day, things are going downhill.
Yeah, he's also, like, arguably the most separated from Marc Spector.
Yes.
Which is why I think he's the emotional one, because he started off as a made-up friend, and it makes sense that he's like the emotional bear because he has someone to like lean on.
Exactly.
Like how I see it, like with him being like a rich movie producer, he's the person to lean on. Moon Knight, like Mark couldn't handle reality, so he made himself a Jimmy Olsen, and Stephen Grant is his Jimmy Olsen.
Okay, I feel like it's a really interesting way of putting it.
Yeah.
Is that he needed someone to
rely on.
To rely on. He needed a best pal.
Yeah. And that's where Stephen Grant comes in.
Especially since Jake Lockley is definitely more, if we're going to be using the Superman like analogy, Jake Lockley is more of a Batman to him. As someone who will do anything to keep him safe.
Yeah.
Violence or otherwise.
Yeah.
You know? And the delusion is Wonder Woman. Because he's cute.
And I'm a Taurus. And,
Okay, no more Superman analogies. We talk about Superman too much on this podcast.
I agree, but I just want, like, I had no other character that I can think of that was like...
that was a good way of putting it.
Yeah, where it was like millionaire, disconnect, best friend, emotional baggage.
Yeah,
to me, that's Jimmy Olsen.
We just watched My Adventures with Superman. That show's really good. Watch it. Anyways, but like, I never thought about it from a psychological lens.
Yeah.
Because I always knew that Jake Lockley was kind of the one that's going to be a lot more violent, but I didn't even think about the idea of Stephen Grant being an emotional center. Especially since, like I was saying, the Star Fox delusion is, and I know I'm repeating myself, is the one that's the most deep into fantasy, right?
Yeah.
Which is insane, because you know what else is interesting? It's also highly divorced from Marc Spector's own life. There's no Moon Knight. It's just the Moon Knights, right?
Yeah.
It's not he alone has to deal with the situation. It's the Moon Knight vessels and the Moon Knight like garrison basically.
Well, like I ultimately see it as like it is like some fantasy desire, because the fact that it's created, since he says it was created more recently, in my mind it's like a fantasy that was created whenever he was feeling alone, because it's the idea of this brigade where he's not alone.
He's not the only Moon Knight.
Yeah, they are the Moon Knights.
Yeah.
But to wrap up the second third, and kind of enforce the emotional centerpiece. Stephen Grant runs away because, like, unlike all the other Moon Knights, he's scared.
He doesn't fight.
Yeah, he doesn't fight.
He's one of the 4 personas that are seen there that does not fight.
He doesn't fight, he runs, and when he gets caught up, he's like, I'm scared, what happens after this? And then Mark's like, oh, well, you're never really going to be gone.
Like you're always going to be a part of me, dude. You were the first.
And that's exactly, like, they had this heart-touching moment where Stephen's scared, and he's like, you're the first, you're always going to be there, which they, like, you know, they did do in the show as well.
Yeah.
But, like, that just enforces more of the emotional center because he was literally very cut dry, gone you, but he has to almost have gay sex with Stephen Grant.
He has to have a heart-to-heart with his closest, with the persona that he's been with the most, right?
Yeah.
Because the Star Fox delusion, he gives up. He just disappears because he's not that strong. The Moon Knight / Jake Lockley puts up a fight, but he loses.
Yeah.
Which is insane because it goes back to that first part where whenever Khonshu was pretending to be Moon Knight in Mark's brain, how Mr. Knight loses the fight, but this time he wins the fight. You kind of more symbolic of him like kind of reabsorbing the character, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with Stephen Grant, you can't punch Stephen Grant. He's not someone you punch. He's someone you talk to, and I really like that because Stephen Grant is just like, what's gonna happen? Like, am I gonna be gone? Am I gonna be gone forever? You know, and it is very much Mark's like,
no, you fucking parasite. You're staying.
Mark's like, oh man, you've always been a part of me, even before I could say your name. You know, like, and I feel like it's really tender and interesting and a very intimate moment for this character and his delusions.
He's just like me, for real.
I love how we're having this nice, soft conversation. I just gotta bring it back down to reality that he is talking to himself.
That's me with my Ryan Gosling persona.
One thing I thought was really interesting was whenever he's like, they all go away, and he's like at his most, and he's like, all right, I gotta go kill Khonshu. That is such like a watershed moment for me that it's like, holy shit, like he's gonna do the thing now, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a story of a fight for struggle in his own brain, right?
Yeah, and I do like that once it's all said and done, he does do the whole, like, now I need to go fight Khonshu. But first, he stops at Gina for more pancakes.
He stops at Gina afterwards.
After it?
Yeah, he stops at Gina after all the personas go away.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. After the episodes, he's like, we need to go kill Khonshu. And then he stops for pancakes.
Okay, we'll get to the pancakes in a minute.
Fucking...
Because, like, he resigns himself that, like, because at the end of the day, what this story is about, it's about one man's struggle in his own mind. Yeah. Right? Which is why, for me, I'm more open to be like, oh, it's all in his head. Yeah. Right? Because at the end of the day, it's Khonshu is struggling, or not Khonshu, Marc Spector is struggling with Khonshu, who is either this weird other dimensional god, Egyptian god, or it's just another persona in his head.
Well, like, as much as I like analyzing, trying to figure out if it is real or not, it's just one of those stories where, like, it ultimately doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. Because it's like it's kind of like, does Superman die at the end of All-Star Superman? The answer is it doesn't matter.
Yeah, does Superman die? Is Perfect... What delusions are from Perfect Blue?
Are real.
Are the murders in American Psycho real?
Did they happen? The answer is...
It doesn't matter. You're missing the point if you're analyzing that, because you're supposed to be analyzing what it represents.
Yeah. And with this, it is very much a representation of one man's desire to eat pancakes.
To eat pancakes and survive his mental illness. You know, there was once a very important man that once said, all that man cannot have all that power.
Yeah. And then he went to go get pancakes.
yeah, that's exactly what that man did.
No, because the last part of the third, like the last third, is him with the pancakes. He's like, God, these are fucking divine. If I remember correctly, it's like exactly what he says. Hang on, I have it on my phone.
And that's also when they start talking about like the actual backstory of Marc Spector.
Yes, because this is the part where they are cutting back and forth to his backstory.
I don't know if it's after he absorbs Stephen Grant that they go straight to Gino's, but I know after he absorbs Stephen Grant, that's when the backstory starts, and we have like the field of view where.
So it starts with his backstory, right? Okay. Holy shit, I didn't even realize this. I'm looking into it, there's a single panel of a spaceman during the backstories. Of like a spaceman toy, which is interesting. I forget that he's wearing his yarmulke like the entirety of the backstories. Yeah, okay, so how it goes is that throughout this last bit, right, it's his quest to get to Khonshu again and to kill him, interlaced with his backstory, starting from when his delusions, which what I like about this is that this isn't the backstory of Moon Knight. This is the life story of Marc Spector.
Yeah.
This is it starts with his delusions as a child.
It's not Moon Knight, it's not Mr. Knight, it is the real deal.
It goes from his delusions as a child and his father discovering to his talking with a psychiatrist about his dissociative identity disorder to
Which
his
the
first
delusion that causes the DID is that he creates a friend named Stephen Grant.
Right. Stephen Grant's been there. In this, Stephen Grant's been there since he was a child, right? It goes from that to him at the mental institution, to his father dying, to his time in the Marines, where he gets dishonorably discharged, to him meeting Frenchie.
What did he do that caused him to be dishonorably discharged?
They found out about his background.
Oh, yeah.
If I remember correctly,
because he lied to get in there.
He lied to get in.
Didn't they find out about his backstory? Because, like, if I recall correctly, there's like a scene where he's like
looking out in the moon. He's looking out at the stars whenever, and they're like, "Mark, come on, dude, we gotta get going."
Well, I just remember him being like super like snarky with them at one point, and in my mind, that's like, oh, Jake Lockley. That's when Jake Lockley comes in to his life. When he's in the Marines.
I forget that, like, early on he sees the delusion of Mark in this. He sees the delusions of Khonshu being like, "Hello."
Yeah.
He's like, "You'll know me, and you'll be complete when I'm there. Hang on, we're going." Yeah, so he visits. So he comes back from the mental institution with his dad. I'm skipping through so much just to get to that part. Yeah. So what it is that he's looking at the moon, and he hears Khonshu's voice. Oh yeah, I remember what it is now. He dissociated going through a walk in the desert naked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, "I was just going for a walk." And they're like, "Dude, you're in a minefield."
Yeah, isn't he naked?
He's naked. And then they're like, "Marc Spector, we found out you're unfit for duty." Right? And that's after that is whenever he meets Frenchie, and then he does his private military work.
Yeah, because in my mind, like, that Marine stuff, like, I don't know, like, what they did with the words to make me feel this way, but, like, that walk and stuff like that...
It felt snarky.
It felt Jake Lockley. Like, I feel like the Marines is when he formed Jake Lockley.
To me, it felt like... Well, no, because they mentioned Jake Lockley in one of the Yeah, okay. I'm Marc Spector, and Steven isn't here. Steven? No, why would Steven be here? Him and Jake. And this is whenever he's still a kid. Talking to a psychiatrist.
Okay, so Jake is even deeper than that.
Yeah,
okay.
Jake, from what it looks like, was not too long after Steven, but still later than Steven.
How was a kid cab driving?
How is that motherfucker driving? I wonder if, and this is don't look too deep into this, guys. I wonder if his delusions on Jake Lockley whenever he was a kid were him as a cab driver still.
Yeah, I probably not. He probably had him as like some type of like I don't want to use the word bully,
but like the bully that's on your side.
Yeah, kinda.
But like this is another part where we're telling out of order because it's easier to tell out of order.
Yeah.
But like he goes from the Marines to Frenchie, and Frenchie's like, "I like you because you can do what you can," right? And then we get the whole deal where he's like kidnapping it like a heroin like producer.
Yeah, they're in Afghanistan still.
Yeah,
I think it was Afghanistan.
Yeah, they're in like a Middle Eastern country, and they're like heroin.
Yeah, and like he captures this dude, and throughout there, I remember after he captures the dude, and he's like threatening for like information, he meets Bushman.
Mm-hmm. And Bushman's like.
Yeah, but like if you think, I forgot exactly what Bushman said, but I remember it was like kind of a parallel of what Frenchie said to him too.
He's like, "I like you, Marc Spector."
Yeah, he was kind of like, "I like you because you," like he almost said exactly. If I recall correctly, he said something very similar where he was like, "I like you because you do what you do," or some shit.
Oh
like
fuck!
that.
I forgot. He meets Frenchie because he's doing underground fight rings after the military.
Yeah.
Anyways, hang on, we're looking through it. Heroin.
Yes.
Some stuff we're gonna talk about in a minute. Yeah, okay, so he's talking with Frenchie and the dude. He's talking about the boss and. Okay, no, this is the parallel. He says, "You can call me Bushman. I've been watching both of you, and I think we're gonna become very good friends indeed." And if I'm correct, Frenchie says something similar whenever he discovers him.
Yeah.
Give me a minute. Heroin.
All my homies hate Bushman, by the way.
Oh, yeah. He said, "I'm Jean Paul, but you can call me Frenchie. Everyone else in this place does that. Marc Spector, I think you and I are going to become very good friends."
Yeah, like, I knew there was like a parallel between.
Which I think is interesting because Bushman is
a piece of shit.
Not only is he a piece of shit, he is Moon Knight's biggest villain.
Yeah,
Bushman. He's Moon Knight's Joker, for lack of a
better
word.
he is. Yeah.
Especially since in the comics he cut off Bushman's face. Remember that time in the New 52 whenever the Joker had his face surgically cut off by a different supervillain?
Do you remember?
That's a thing.
Do you remember when when a certain rapper put on a metal mask while he was still beating Hot Red, and it melted his face with his deformities,
making him the best rapper ever. But now he can never take off the mask. We're talking about Doom, Mr. MF Doom. We gotta we gotta get a Fantastic Four story.
Yeah, we do.
Podcast. I just need to find one that works.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so continuing with the backstory, because mind you, as we said, we're talking about, or the backstory happens in split moments while the events that we're about to say happen.
Going on, but we're doing the backstory first so it's easier for you guys.
Yeah.
But like...
He invites Bushman onto the Moon Knight copter.
If I remember correctly, he invites them on the expedition with the whole, like, Khonshu's tomb thing, and it's Marlene and her dad. Yeah. Right? And the fucking Frenchie's like, I don't like this. This is really bad. And Mark's like, since when did you make my decisions for me?
Yeah.
Right. Because at the end of it, this was a conscious choice by Mark to do this.
I do want to point out that I think it's very funny of Frenchie to be driving his helicopter, because at the beginning, in the first third, he mentions Frenchie driving something called the, and I quote, Moon Knight copter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
Copter.
It's one of the weird little, like, flash moments in the first where he walks by Frenchie and it's, like, all gassed up. And he's like, yes, mister. Yes, Mr. Moon Knight.
So that's why I find it really, really, really funny that he's driving a helicopter in this scene.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like, we basically get the inciting incident that creates Moon Knight, where he is
Bushman turns on them. Yeah.
Bushman turns on him, stabs him because Mark, understandably, had some issues with him killing innocent people that did nothing wrong. Yeah. And so, but instead, Khonshu's like, do you want to die? Do you want to die on the ground? Or do you want to get up? Do you want to fight? Sorry, I'm fucking...
The face Trent's making as he's saying this.
For some reason, the voice I chose was, it's a cow farm.
They're coming out of that.
Yeah. But like, he's like, yeah, do you want to get up? Do you want to die like a lonely man in the desert? Or do you want to get up and fight back? And he's like, crawl. And Mark's like, I want to live. Right? And
they lead him to the
like,
tomb.
Crawl. You know? And he gets to the tomb and Marlene's like, what? And he's like, how are you alive? He's like, those robes, I think they're for me. Yeah. You know? And then that's the backstory of Moon Knight, is that we get it, but what I like is that it's framed not around a superhero origin. It's not framed around the heroic Moon Knight surviving from the dead with help from an otherworldly source. It's framed around his mental illness. The inciting incident is not, the first thing we see of his backstory is not him wearing the Moon Knight costume for the first time. It's him playing outside and meeting a new friend. Yeah. Moon Knight is one of the most prominent Jewish superheroes. I just wanted to say that, and I think that's really cool. I like Jewish superheroes.
Yeah, there's surprisingly,
very few.
There's surprisingly very few for the fact of that I feel like comic book media is where there's been a lot of prolific Jewish people involved.
Yes,
Stan Lee was Jewish.
Jack Kirby, the creators of Superman, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were both Jewish. Were both Jewish Cleveland, Ohioans.
Because obviously I'm not saying these are the only characters that exist in comics that are Jewish. I can't think of much off the top of my head.
I think there's a
Moon Knight, and then there's I'm pretty sure isn't one what's her name? Harzel.
Harleen Quinzel.
Yeah, Harleen Quinzel.
She's Jewish in the show, but I don't know if she's Jewish in the comics. Yeah. But
I'm pretty sure she is, because I've seen, there's this one cosplayer I followed who was like, I just found out that she's Jewish, and then she started playing Harley Quinn and overdoing the downtown New Jersey Jewish act. Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I don't know, religion with characters is very interesting, because obviously the Judaism of Marc Spector doesn't really play into it a lot.
Yeah, it's very subtle. The only reason you know he's Jewish is because he wears a yarmulke, the way they dress during the funeral.
He's not like Daredevil, Daredevil's Catholicism is very much baked into the character, and I think if it was gone, it would actually detract from the character. But his space as a Jewish superhero is fantastic, because Jewish people need superheroes. They're very much a group of people who have had years of awful things.
Which I'm glad that Moon Knight went out of the way, especially in the show, to show the yarmulke, even though it was barely. They easily could have skipped over it, and I'm glad that they didn't, because I know there is a bunch of instances of when superheroes go into media, they kind of get whitewashed or this is that, because Who am I thinking of? Was it Scarlet Witch? Wasn't she?
Scarlet Witch is Romani.
Yeah, isn't she Romani? Yeah, they do not show that at all.
Scarlet Witch in the comics is canonically Romani. Same thing, I believe, with Quicksilver, right?
Yeah.
But in the movie, she's played by Elizabeth Olsen, which I don't want to detract Elizabeth Olsen's performance as Scarlet
she
Witch.
is good and hot.
She. Damn it! I lose my train of thought every time. She does a very good job with it. If you've seen WandaVision, you know she can do really good stuff with this character. But she is one of those characters that did get whitewashed. There's quite a few others. You know, I'm really blanking, but like, there's quite a few characters that have been whitewashed.
I say, isn't there a decent amount of showings of Rogue and like Rogue's not white?
Rogue is Louisianan.
Really?
She is white, actually. As far as I know, she's white because she is a very thick Louisiana accent. She's very much a New Orleans person.
Then I'm thinking of someone else from the X-Men.
Because, well, yeah, there are instances of X-Men characters being whitewashed. I really am blanking out on them.
We could make a special with the podcast of us talking about all the whitewashed comic book heroes.
Oh, the ancient one from Doctor Strange was whitewashed.
Really?
For being not a Tibetan character. Yeah, a Tibetan character. The ancient one in the comics is a Tibetan man.
You know, I did find that very weird of, like, that character not being...
To be, like, a weird Irish woman instead of, like...
Yeah, Tibetan. Because, like, when you go to the temple, everyone is Tibetan-looking.
Yeah.
Like...
Wong's Tibetan.
Yeah, baby Wong.
Baby.
Yeah, Wong. He's literally... What was his Mystic Supreme?
He's the... Make it sound like a Taco Bell order.
It kind of is.
Oh my god, we gotta get back on track. We're not cutting that out, by the way. Well, yeah, because it still fits into that whole idea, is that, like, as a Jewish superhero, and I do believe he's the most prominent one, right?
Yeah.
Not that his Judaism, like, hits super hard. You know what? I was just thinking, you know who else is a very prominent Jewish superhero in Marvel myth? The Thing.
Oh yeah, the Thing is Jewish.
Ben Grimm is Jewish, and what makes it more interesting about Ben Grimm, the Thing, is that he's based off the Golem.
Yeah, sorry, I'm laughing because I'm thinking about that meme that people were using where it was like an out of context panel where it's the Thing with a monocle in, and it's like, "Excuse me, madam, but I do believe it's the clobbering hour."
Yeah, no, the Thing is incredibly Jewish. It's built into his character. He is a golem. Right.
Yeah.
I love that Marc Spector is a prominent Jewish superhero, as top as one that represents the mentally ill. Right.
Yeah.
I love Moon Knight. If you guys can't already tell, and we will get back on track, and we will finish the story. It's just I love Moon Knight as a character.
Yeah.
I think he's interesting. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna finish up the story, and then we'll do the same thing we did last time with Batman, where we kind of have our thoughts about the character as a whole.
Yeah.
Which, if you guys do want this to be a regular thing, let us know. If not, we will try and tone it down. No, we won't. Because obviously
fuck you guys. I don't care what you say.
We do care a lot about these characters. We do care a lot about these characters. And we have a lot to say about them, right? We're probably first time we talk about characters, we'll probably end up doing this little conversation about the character as a whole.
I mean, ultimately, in my opinion, characters matter, and I feel like the characters are what makes a story a story. Characters need to be taken into consideration. Mm-hmm. They need to matter, and they need to be taken care of.
You can't do this story with pretty much any other Marvel character.
Yeah.
You can't do it with Spider-Man. You can... The only other Marvel character I think I could argue that you could do it with is the Hulk, and even then... Not really.
But instead, they made him a based socialist.
I love Immortal Hulk. Anyways, but like, you can't do this with even other characters who have dissociative identity disorder, because the Hulk's use of DID is markedly different than Marc Spector. And I that's why I want to bring it back. That's why I like that they frame his origin, which is a good retelling of his origin, around his mental illness as opposed to around his role as a superhero.
Yeah.
So while the backstory is going on, we actually get his journey to kill Khonshu, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing he does is he fulfills his promise to come back and save Crowley.
Yes.
Right. Where he goes.
Where we have the Anubis arc.
The Anubis arc. Real as fuck.
Well, it spans like 2.5 issues.
Yeah, it's about 2.5 issues.
I would argue it took longer to do the Anubis stuff than the actual Khonshu stuff. Yeah.
But, like, basically, he wants to, like, get Crawley's soul back, and Crawley's like, by God, Marc Spectington.
You've come for me.
You've come for me? Your friend you said you'd give back their soul?
He gets there, and then he's like, Mr. Anubis Dogman.
I want my friend's soul back.
And then he was like, there's only one thing you can get from me, it's something I lost in the other realm. Or was it called
The Other Void?
Other Void.
Oh
yeah.
my god! And we get that fucking panel. Where we get that panel of him diving into the Other Void.
Yeah.
And it's just this beautiful multi Spectre like Mr. Knight of him going down as it's like.
It was a very Dream On moment.
It was so Dream On.
Dream On.
But there's these speech bubbles about. I don't have it physically. There's these speech bubbles of like different parts in his past, right?
Yeah.
Let's find the page. Oh, the fucking bugs. Sorry, looking through this is interesting. Yeah, where he's like falling, and it's like Mark, where it's like conversations about his mental health going on in his brain.
Really?
I dropped my phone. As he like descends, right, and then he does the cool fight with the mummy dude on the bug.
Yeah, it's a bunch of mummies riding scarabs.
Yes, it's these weird zombie dudes riding scarabs, and and he gets captured. He loses the bug fight.
I'm so tired of one Mr. Knight losing all these fucking fights, man. I thought he was a superhero. Sorry to think he's just a weak-ass little ill bitch.
He's mentally ill. That was my issue. That was one of my issues with the show, was that they made him kind of invincible.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, I just hate there's a severe... people listening, and you're going to hear me talk about this in constantly different issues, especially whenever we get to some of our movie episodes. I hate superhero invincibility. I hate that every superhero media that's like cinematic and a lot of things, it's just like as if we're playing fucking Arkham Knight and I'm pressing circle and they're just doing a silly little dance that they never get hit from.
Yeah.
I hate it.
That's kind of my issue, is that is the type of invulnerability, because you have to do that with certain characters, because with Superman, he's invulnerable, but that's not the important part. The important part is the philosophy behind the character, right?
Yeah.
The important part is...
Well, I would argue that's just DC's thing. Oh, it's always about the philosophy of the character.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, yeah, DC excels at creating philosophy.
Well, it's
DC
always...
excels at making philosophical characters.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Marvel, I feel like, is more willing to make characters that are.
Yeah. Well, because I feel like Marvel, it's very much like it's two different storytelling. Marvel, I feel like, is very much like a rise above kind of story, while DC's very much of a testing morality kind of story, where they're doing a philosophy of, is this paragon of good Superman going to break down when all this stuff happens? Why is he just good for no reason?
Yeah,
is Batman gonna fuck Catwoman? I don't know.
No, I want to know. Send me the pages, DC Comics. but you're right. Like Superman stories are a lot more. They're a lot more. They test his philosophy. They test his altruism. It's, will you go this far to save Lex Luthor, the man who's killed millions, the man who has made your life a living hell?
Yeah.
Wonder Woman is, it's, do you find the compassion in these people? For the Flash, it's
Put a baby in a microwave.
Put a baby in a microwave. Will you microwave that small child? It's with the Flash, it's like it's how far does your kindness go towards these people? With Cyborg, it's, are you a man? Not gonna play football anymore there, bud.
He's just like JID for real.
But with Marvel characters, I feel like it's a lot more character focused, where it's Daredevil's situation, for example, is, am I doing the right thing? Is my violence justified under God, or is it an excuse for me to go beat up people I don't like?
Yeah.
With the Hulk, is the monster inside me? Or am I fighting it? Or am I fighting something I should let happen? Right. With Spider-Man, am I gonna make Am I gonna make rent this month?
Spider-Man, it's, am I going to deliver these pizzas in time?
Yeah. With Spider-Man, it's how do I juggle all of it at once?
Yeah.
And with Moon Knight, is this real? Am I truly a hero, or am I just a sick man who uses fantasies to cope?
Yeah.
And I find that interesting, is that's why I actually kind of like that he loses fights. Because it kind of proves that he's not someone with superpowers, right? Yeah. He doesn't have superpowers. He just fights. He has a potentially mystic individual on his side.
I also feel like it's just a very good relation to the idea of mental illness in general, because it's a story of that he is constantly progressing, but it is nowhere near linear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because he can make this big revelation that he has to kill Khonshu, But that doesn't mean he's Superman. That doesn't mean that he's going to win the next fight.
Well, it's just kind of like the old idea of like progress isn't linear when it comes to people who do struggle with mental health. So it makes sense that he loses fights here and there because he is at the end of the day someone who is mentally ill.
Yeah, like speaking as my own struggles with mental illness, I have had times where I feel like I am progressing and then it feels like everything comes spiraling down.
Yeah. And then you have pancakes.
And then I have pancakes. and then I tell my friend that they're fucking divine. And then Gina's like, "You gonna be good, Mr. Knight?" And I'm like, "Yes, Gina."
You laugh, but this is just you, IRL, with French, what was it, a Belgian waffle? So, you literally are Marc Spector.
Oh, there's this place that we go to every now and then that's open. It's like a 24-hour diner.
Yes, they cut out that I said the name, censor it, make a beep noise.
We're gonna. I'm probably gonna.
I'm not trying to get doxxed.
Yeah, so this nice family diner, they have really nice Belgian waffles, and they make fun of me for being like, "I'd like a delectable Belgian waffle," to the waitress. You're right. I didn't even think about that. The idea of him constantly losing fights doesn't mean that he's not. It means that on top of him being human, it's also, it kind of gives out the idea of it comes your mental health, your coping comes in waves.
Yeah, because whenever we get to the end part of the story, I'll talk about how it's my interpretation of how the story in total encapsulates his mental health, which is why I was talking about how I think the fight him losing fights encapsulizes the idea that people who are mentally ill progress in a non-linear way, and him losing these fights ultimately ends up to where he needs to be to progress. Because after he does lose that fight, he's locked up with Anubis' wife.
With Anubis' wife, who he is... What's her name again?
Yeah, I don't know. She was hot as hell.
Anma. Cody. Cody has a thing for jackal women, apparently. Okay.
The viewer... You know what, Trent, you're editing... Trent that's hearing this right now, pull up the panel. I want it on the screen right now.
You have to send it to me.
And then I want the people watching me to tell me if I'm crazy or not, because I thought this was a safe place.
So anyways, he meets Anma, who's Anubis' wife, and she's like, "Well, you're trading my slavery here for one for another," and Mark's like, "No.
No,
whatever. And they're like,
I just want my old British man back.
And one thing I like is that they so after he meets Amna, he's supposed to be sacrificed to these people for whatever their weird god is, right?
Yeah.
And the people that save him, he doesn't save himself, it's the personalities.
Yeah.
And I like that because it's very much a person with dissociative identity disorder is not going to get rid of their alters, right?
Yeah, it's them trying to take, without a better choice of the word, taking the seat from the personalities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you can't take the seat always. You have to be in tandem with your system, right? And I like that what it is that it's Moon Knight, the Star Fox delusion, and Stephen Grant are there, and they're like, "You thought we were gonna let you lose?" It's very much harkens back to the idea of what alters are for with a person with dissociative identity disorder, and that is to protect the main persona.
Yeah, the host.
The host, correct.
Yeah.
And I like that. I like how they don't just disappear. They don't just get reabsorbed, because this isn't a journey that Mark can take alone, right?
Yeah.
Ever since the start, he's had people with him. He's had Crawley. He's had Frenchie. He's had Gina and Marlene. And even now, this isn't a fight he's going to take on himself, right? He doesn't have to do it alone. He has Stephen Grant. He has Jake Lockley with him. And then he gets Crawley's soul back, and he fights through hordes. He gets to Khonshu, and he's fighting, and of course Khonshu's doing the classic, "You're just useless," There's nothing, your mind was fractured, I made you better.
He's literally my abusive ex-girlfriend.
Sure.
To be honest.
Sure, buddy.
I've heard women tell me that all the time when they start putting a pyramid in my town.
Yeah, dude, this shit happens all the time. Yeah, so he gets back to the thing, Oh, I forgot he refers to him as his pet, and then refers to him as his son. Khonshu's like, "My pet, my son."
Yeah.
Well,
it's a breakaway of showing that Khonshu doesn't actually respect Mark.
Yeah, and how he has him sinking into that image of a brain.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Oh, this is just kind of where you belong, You're weak. You're meant to be consumed." Yeah,
because even though he tries, he knows Mark wants to be treated like a human, but ultimately Khonshu doesn't see. He sees him as lesser. He sees him as part of the food chain.
He sees him as a puppet.
Yeah.
You know.
Which I find very interesting because there's a definite dissonance between this Khonshu and like the comic book Khonshu, like, or the show Khonshu in this comic book Khonshu, because in this one it's very much an entity that is manipulating and using Moon Knight, which I know in the show they kind of hint at that could be possible with the fact that the villain tries to manipulate Mark into believing that, but ultimately Khonshu's just like a sassy bitch in the show. Yeah, that's all he kind of is. He's kind of sassy.
In the comics is Khonshu reliable as a mentor, as a father figure, as your source of power? Because I like this is that right before we get to the last chapter, I believe, and Khonshu's like, this will be your tomb, Mark, because he escapes from the weird brain, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, are you ready, my son? And Mark's like, are you ready? And oh fuck, I forgot about this part right at the start where like he thinks he hears Marlene, and then he's back on the shock table, right?
Yeah.
And it's Khonshu with Billy and Bobby's jackal forms and Emmett as like the crocodile like lady, and they're trying to shock him. And he gets out, which is good. You know, he gets out, and then we get to the final part where it's his showdown with it's the showdown with Khonshu, and Khonshu is throwing everything psychologically at the wall. He has him fight Bushman again, right? You know, as like a last like hurrah, and Mark's like, none of this is real. And then it's just him and Khonshu, and there's this great, fantastic page where he grabs Khonshu by the head, and he's like, my name is Marc Spector. My name is Stephen Grant. My name is Jake Lockley. And it cuts between them. It's like, we're Moon Knight, and we never needed you. And it's just crushes Khonshu. And there's still the seeds of doubt. We get to look at the Manhattan skyline, and it's fine. There's no temple. There's no sand everywhere. And he's like, is this real? Is this all in my head? It doesn't matter. I'm me.
Yeah, and then
it ends, right? Fantastic story.
See, yeah, in that with that being said, that's where I'm going to wrap up what I talked about earlier about me seeing it as a perspective of like a relative of mental health, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to like do a quick rundown here. So start at the beginning with the shock therapy and the abstract of these like archaic psychological uses to like supposedly heal the sick, right? I like to think that this whole thing, I see it as a representation of someone struggling with mental illness going throughout, like, the progress, right? You start off at the low. That's the low, is he's doing this archaic. I like to see it as almost as a symbolism of harm. Mm-hmm. To an extent, like someone who's at their low harming themselves, because that explains why I see like these archaic experiments done, if it all is a delusion, is that he believes that he's in this like low place where he does deserve this. Mm-hmm. And then he progresses, it's non-linear, and especially at the end, which is the other focus I want to make, it's kind of like, you ever heard of like the like throw the pill away moment, where someone feels like, you know, they've had the years of therapy, they've had the years of medication.
It doesn't feel like it's working.
It's not necessarily working, but they're at a point where they feel like they can just go on their own. Like there's a lot of people I've known that have my moments. A YouTuber shout out. I remember listening to a Game Grumps episode where whenever Danny got diagnosed with OCD, he spent years in therapy and getting medication and stuff for it. And he had a moment where he was standing at a lake, and he realized that all of his tactics have been helping. He's in a way better spot, and he just tossed his pills into the lake, and he'd been off them since, and his therapist has been perfectly fine and working on there. I feel like that killing Khonshu is like that pill throwing moment, which anybody listening, by the way, don't go and throw away your pills just because you feel better. Those means that the pills are working.
Yeah, if you guys feel fine, if you're on mood stabilizers, and you're like, maybe I don't need the pills,
it means they're working.
Take them.
Yeah. Because, like, the pill throwaway moment is a sense of, like, it's the end of the battle kind of deal.
Or at least you are, the battle that you're in is, you are in a much better place than you were before, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because, like, obviously, you know, you live with your struggles every day.
Like, it's never going to not happen.
Yeah.
Like, you're always going to be stuck with it. Once you there aren't cures to mental
I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, the pill throwaway thing, the better analogy, it's the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, yes. It is you realizing that this is my life and I can live through it. And
it's self-actualization in terms of your mental illness.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I interpret the Khonshu killing thing, is that Khonshu
has been a crutch for Mark.
Yes. And he's getting rid of that crutch, and he's kind of like facing the music.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because I like the idea of like, if we're going to go off the angle of someone going through a mental health crisis, the idea of the shock therapy being like a reference to self-harm. I don't know how I feel about that, mostly because, again, Mark's not a willing participant in it.
Yeah, well, my thing is like, I don't know, I feel like you can make a solid argument for the self-harm, and even though he's not a willing participant, because a lot of people... I don't know, I wouldn't consider self-harm to be something that's necessarily willing. It's definitely an impulse in the moment, because there's no person I've ever met that, like, is like, oh yeah, I definitely need to do that. Like, you leave self-harm regretting it, which is why self-harm is so damaging to the mental health, because it just puts you in a lower spot.
I think if you see this as like a reference in the psyche, now that I'm thinking about it, the idea that Billy and Bobby are all too willing to do it to him is kind of part of his subconscious that's like, you deserve pain.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think Billy and Bobby are, like, the part of his subconscious telling them, like, you need to do this.
You need pain, they're intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
At least to a certain extent. I don't want to say that the whole time. Like,
yeah.
But, like, just the idea, I don't know. Mark conquers his demons in this, and I think that's very great. It's a really good story. I really feel a lot in it, and I feel like the ending is really well-deserved. Because, you know, because the entire time, right, Khonshu is treating him like a child. Right? Where he's like, you're ready, my son. And then the moment he fails, he's like, perhaps I thought too much of you. Perhaps I thought too highly of you.
Yeah, literally my ex-girlfriend.
Sure. He's like, perhaps, maybe, what are you gonna do? Sit here and you're wasting your time away eating pancakes instead of helping me? Like, are you stupid? You know? He spends the entire time like...
Bacon pancakes.
Shut up. He spends the entire time just, like, negging. Like, for lack of a better word, negging. Like, Dog is a #1 pancake hater. Like...
Do not bring this man to a high IHOP. For real, for real.
Do not bring this man to an IHOP establishment. God forbid a Denny's.
Kachu's like, we are going to the Waffle House.
Mark, stop here. I don't want to go to Waffle House. I want to go to Denny's. Are you a fool? Do you see yourself as above me?
Literally so true.
Yeah, no. I don't know. Mark just has to take a lot of shit in this, and like Khonshu, he constantly talks down to him, which is insane because it's not that like Mark needs Khonshu, it's Khonshu needs Mark.
Yeah, but he's putting into his mind that's the other way around.
That the only reason why Mark has power, the only reason why Mark is the Moon Knight,
and then he's also
is because of Khonshu.
Yeah, and he also guilt trips him with the fact that like he brought him back to life.
Yeah.
Through his death.
Yeah.
Which is also another aspect that's shared with the show. That is a key point.
Yeah, no, for sure. Is that like Khonshu is very much a psychologically abusive father in this, right?
Yeah.
Because again, he refers to him as his son. During the funeral of Mark's actual dad, he's like, "That's not your father, I am."
Yeah.
And I always saw that as like Khonshu invading Mark's reminiscing of his life.
Yeah.
As trying to justify it as you've always been on a path towards me, whether you want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
Which that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You know, people aren't destined. I know that even in stuff like the Marvel Universe, where people are destined for things, people aren't destined to meet other people. It just kind of happens.
Yeah.
You know, and the idea of Mark getting away, breaking free of that abusive relationship is powerful. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
As I don't know, I can't think of much like more to say. Like there's the mental health realization. I do really like Marc Spector and Jake Lockley and Marc Spector and Stephen Grant and Mr. Knight and Moon Knight. Those are really good characters, I must say.
I like how they're all distinct.
Yeah.
I like how they're all different people.
They yeah. And
what do you mean? Jake's not here right now. Why would he be here? Why would Stephen be here? Are you stupid?
And Frenchie were good.
Yeah, not Duchamp, that is Frenchie. Crawley, he was British.
Yeah, he was old and British, man.
There was a lady named Gina, and she made pancakes.
God, I'm tired of pancakes. Okay, that's the only
Just
thing.
once I would like waffles.
This is the only, like, complaint that I have about the show. I get, not the show, the comic, because I get that it was supposed to be like, let's take a break from this and gather ourselves again. But at the same time, it was just so stupid that we had to stop, not just once for pancakes. Like, I'm on Khonshu's side. Why the fuck did he stop for pancakes? He did it twice. He did it twice.
I like to think that the pancakes are they're thematically relevant. because they represent mental health breaks and also delicious IHOP pancakes.
I like to think that, because, like, I get it. The reason he does it a second time is because it's very much like a reach around of him, like, gathering all his friends, minus Frenchie because he's dead.
Yeah, what a bitch.
Yeah. Where he's, like, trying to gather up all of his friends and stuff like that, which... What happened with Marlene?
She just kind of disappears.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like,
well, the way I saw it
she's
was
kind
that
of gone.
Marlene is used as a device in the story to... I feel like the whole deal with Marlene in this is that she's being used subconsciously for Marc as keep going towards...
Like a lure, yeah.
Yeah, keep going towards consciousness.
Because it is very interesting...
Because whenever she wakes up in the diner in the first third, she's like, we gotta get to the pyramid.
Which was right after Khonshu was scolding him about pissing and eating delectable pancakes.
Yeah, because the next page is Marlene awake, standing up, like, we need to go.
Yeah.
And then whenever Khonshu appears to Marc as Moon Knight at the foot of the pyramid, he takes Marlene, right? He beats him and takes Marlene, right?
Yeah, I mean, that ultimately makes sense. Marlene's just a puppet for Khonshu to, like, drag him along. She's a lure.
And
device.
how in the second third, Marlene's the one that's like, what do you mean? We're at the mental institution because you used to be a patient.
Yeah.
And she's the one that's like, you should direct it.
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
Yeah, they could definitely hear the cat trying.
Sorry, I was holding the cat. I'm getting ready to stop recording, so I gotta hold my cat. But
yeah,
like,
no. I like the story. I give it an A+.
I give it an A+ too. This is very much a fantastic story that I am so glad I got to read it.
Yeah, so I liked it more than Killing Joke. Definitely liked it more than Batman Year One. You know, I still kind of my dick's still hard over Superman All-Star. So I don't know if I could say it was better than that. But
yeah, the next story we're thinking of doing something Spider-Man related.
I want to do Kraven's Last Hunt,
which might be what we do, might not. We're still kind of talking about it. We want to do a little bit of Marvel stuff, and then we will say episode 5 is going to be a pretty fun one. We're going to be talking about a movie, a comic book movie. We're not going to say what it is yet.
Yeah.
But we're going to be talking about a comic book movie, and we decided that it might be fun. Maybe every 5 episodes or so, we talk about like a movie or like like some episodes of like a TV show, just to kind of make things
break up the monotony.
Because like we talk about comics, plus it lets me edit a little bit more. Because these episodes on YouTube, and if anyone is watching on Spotify, which we're on Spotify now.
And it doesn't make me feel like a zombie after reading, because for some reason reading makes me feel awful afterwards.
Yeah. Good stories still feel awful after reading.
Yeah. For, like, I guess last words to the viewer, something, reading just super mentally drains me. Yeah. I don't know why. If
you guys want to have us read anything in particular, don't be afraid to put it out in the comics. We will ignore you. We will ignore you, but I might look at it.
Yeah, perchance.
Marvel, DC, independent comics. The only thing I ask is nothing too long, so we're not going to read like Bone or like the one with the aardvark. I'm blanking on the name. I don't even like that dude very much. He makes me uncomfortable.
What?
I'll talk about it later.
Aardvark?
It's a what is it called?
You talking about Arthur?
No.
The PBS show?
Not the PBS show. No, but like as long as it's not too long, because we do want to read some non-Marvel and DC stuff. I do have some independent stuff I do want to talk about eventually.
Yeah, I also feel a little against Archie as well.
I don't know if Archie... Depends. Okay, I do really want to do Afterlife with Archie. I will say that. I do want to read Afterlife with Archie in the future. But
I guess I wouldn't.
Maybe one of those fun Archie ones where it's like, oh, it's Archie meets Batman, or Archie, but it's zombies. One of those fun ones, right? Yeah. Because I've been told that the 2014 Archie comics are pretty good.
Yeah.
But I'm not. We're superhero people first and foremost whenever it comes to comics. But we do want to talk about stuff. We're eventually going to talk about The Crow. We're eventually going to maybe talk about Hellboy. Maybe it's long, so. But and
then one day we do got one of these episodes we got to do the run. You know what I mean? The run. Maybe like the run. You know what I mean? With a special comedian character in it, like the run. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, the run. What am I talking about?
Yeah, the run
with the blue man.
Yeah. With with the lick my balls in it.
With the Okay, alright. We do really hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like I said, put in the comments if you guys have something you want us specifically to read. We might be able to get to it, we might not. We do have plans, some rough outlines like after episode 5, I know we're going to be reading one comic, and then we're going to be doing a little bit of a marathon for a specific writer and artist duo. But thank you guys for watching. Read comics.
Mwah.
Don't go to mental institutions.
And do eat pancakes.
And do eat pancakes.